USA Broad Street Bullies versus the USSR Red Army, the real Miracle on Ice, by Fat Files.
In the words of Mike Tyson, everybody's got a plan until you punch him in the face.
Accurate.
Today we're talking about the Cold War on Ice. Ladies and gentlemen, one of my favorite movies of all time is the Disney movie Miracle. If you've never seen it, the quick and dirty synopsis of the entire movie is basically the Soviet Union Red Army hockey team was undefeated for like ever. They'd won all the Olympic medals. They were winning all the world titles. They were absolutely the best hockey team on the planet, allegedly. Yet the 1980s American Olympic hockey team managed to band together a bunch of college students, and they somehow managed to pull off the Miracle on Ice by, shedding their egos and coming together to work as a team to beat the Soviet Red Army hockey team. It's a great movie. It's very inspiring. It's got a real Disney appropriate message, but in that movie, they're showing off all the highlights of the Russians, and the coach is explaining how undefeatable this Russian hockey team is. And part of that movie, they go in to explain how the Soviets keep coming over every single year and playing all the American NHL professional teams, and they beat up on them too. But what the movie fails to mention, and probably because it does not have a Disney appropriate message, is that there was one NHL hockey team that not only did not get beat up by the Soviet Red Army team, but whooped their ass so bad that they tried to quit mid-game, and then they had to force them to come back out and continue playing. And
Nice.
That team is the 1976 Philadelphia Flyers, aka the Broad Street Bullies. But first, a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Henson's Shaving. Why is a guy with a beard promoting a razor company? Because I gotta separate my beard from my chest hair somehow, homie.
Yeah.
Okay, the chest hair is connected to the belly hair, which is connected to some other hair that goes up my back, and then it goes to my head, and then I'm not gonna walk around my whole life living like a circle of hair, okay? Anyways, Henson's Shaving, family-owned precision machining company that was originally making parts for like NASA and the aerospace industry. And then one day they're like, what if we just precision machined a razor that was super nice that you could buy one time, it would last you your whole life, and then instead of buying $18.99 Gillette cartridges, you could spend like $7 on 150 razors and be good for a couple of years. So that's what they did. They built a product that looks cooler, it works better, it's actually cheaper than the competition, and the best part of all, it's built with the old school mentality of you're gonna buy this for life. As opposed to the competition that's going out here doing dumb shit like putting gel pads on the razor head so that the razors get all gunked up and disgusting, and then you have to go out and keep buying new refills to shave your face. So if you want to buy the last razor you're ever gonna need, go check out Henson's Shaving. I'm gonna have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video. But
I like it, honestly. So the hook was pretty good. I've never seen this movie. I liked the brief explanation of it. Totally makes sense. Good transition to the material. Going into the ad read, very good ad read. I would almost probably give this a 10 out of 10. I'm boarding between 9 out of 10 and 10 out of 10. Audio was consistent. Audio was flush with each other. Audio wasn't as warm as it could have been, I guess. I might give it a 9 out of 10. Otherwise, it was, no audio distortion. No, audio was fine. Visual aids, appropriate images, appropriate for, what he's doing. I like the butt at the beginning. Buff, well, if you have a beard, why do you need a razor? I know there's people who ask that, and I'm just like, because shaping your beard is a thing. Because not becoming Sasquatch is also a thing. Like, what? I like it. I get a 9 out of 10. Certified absolute just awesome intro and ad read.
to understand this full story, we need to start from the beginning. In 1967, the NHL was expanding. They were going to add 6 new hockey teams, and one of those teams that they were going to add was the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, the men that are responsible for the founding and the financing of the Philadelphia Flyers hockey team are not hockey players. They are just straight up business guys that think that this could be a worthwhile venture to make a bunch of money. Now, this might not seem really important, but it actually is the most important part of the story, and it changes the face of hockey as we know it, because you have to realize at the upper echelons of management at this team, there's nobody that's actually in it for the love of the sport, okay? They're all in it for money, and the money comes from winning. Okay, if you're not picking up on a put down, I'm trying to tell you the Philadelphia Flyers is gonna have some real loose morals when it comes to how that winning gets done, okay? Tradition, sportsmanship, put all that shit off to the side. We're trying to make money.
I'm talking about this.
So they go in, they have their first season, and at this point in time, with all these new hockey teams coming in, there's kind of this stigma around all the new hockey teams that, like, these are the JV teams, they're not actually part of the NHL, they're not as good as the OG NHL teams. And because of that, at this point in time, whenever one of the original NHL teams is playing one of the expansion teams, there's kind of that extra incentive to perform exceptionally well in front of everybody and kind of beat up on the new guy. Despite that, the Flyers go into their second season, and they actually end up making it to the playoffs, where they're going to be playing the St. Louis Blues, and the Blues go in there and literally physically beat the shit out of them, and then that's how they won the hockey game. At which point the Flyers are like, write that down. It's hard to play hockey after you get your ass kicked. So at this point, the Flyers management proceeds to do what I can only describe as essentially building the Monstars from Space Jam.
Those little pipsqueaks just turned into superstars. Suffering succotash. They're monstars.
In the draft that year, there's this young hotshot college player that's like really, really good by the name of David Clark. The problem is nobody wants to draft this kid because he's a diabetic, and apparently everybody thinks that that's going to be a huge issue when it comes to him playing hockey at the highest level. So the Flyers go out to like the best diabetic doctors in the country, and they're like, hey, is this true? You know, what's the deal? Is this going to affect his performance? And the doctors are like, no, if he follows his protocol and eats and does what he's supposed to be doing as a diabetic, he's going to be just fine. So the Flyers draft him. So now the Flyers have their star. They have their Peyton Manning. They have their Brett Favre. And the best part is he's got an axe to grind because no other team was willing to stick their neck out for him. So this dude is 100% going out there with a point to prove. So now the Philadelphia Flyers have their star. They have the heart of the team. They have their skill player. What are we going to do next? We're going to treat him like he is an NFL quarterback, and we are just going to build an offensive line to protect him. They go on.
So I actually really do like this. I think there's absolutely a commentary to be had in regards to morals and ethics, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you can also have the mentality of, well, it's not a war crime the first time. However, let's take what I do. Let's take what the Fat Electrician does, right? I mean, there's morals and ethics in it, right? There are channels out there who would take a story like this. Maybe they'd, type up a script or yoink a script from somebody like the Fat Electrician, run it through an AI, like AI speech bot. Be able to put that out, therefore just, recycled content status. There are reactors out there that I'm sure would be able to look at this video and just, wade through the entirety of this video and just, not really offer any commentary. I will say the lack of breakpoints, like on the main channel, it's a little more challenging, but it's completely possible, right? Learning, you're intaking information, you're analyzing information, you're retaining information. Thus, you're able to talk about it at relevant breakpoints. So when we're talking about, nobody plays hockey at the highest level, we start getting into the discussion that we've had a few times in regards to your business is going to need a CEO, business need a CFO, HR executive, right? They might not be at ground level doing the work, to which I have a subjective disagreement with, but you do need people who are going to effectively fund what you're doing, right? These are inherently different people. Some people just want to be investors and nothing more, to which that leads to a bunch of other conversations, keeping it on point though. And this is one of those reactive things, right? When we talk any sort of courtesy, etiquette, TOS, I mean, there's people who will naturally have morals, right? I try to add more commentary into what I do than, say, some other people would during their reactions. But really, it comes down to kind of gentleman's agreement, quote unquote, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And if that gentleman's agreement isn't there, and if there's nothing inherently against something, I mean, people are going to do it, right? People are going to react to the newest and greatest thing. People react to videos day one, hour one, even sometimes, and go from there. Meanwhile, you will have other people like me who try to wait that 4 days out. Does it kill me in the algorithm? Yeah. But at the same time, it's trying to have those morals, to try to have those ethics when dealing with situations like this. So I think that it also comes on the other side, right? You have this team that lacks these morals and ethics, but is also willing to give somebody a chance where no other team was willing to give someone a chance. So, I mean, I think are they good? Are they bad? I think very few things in life are truly black and white. I think with anything, there's a infinity of gray in between those two extremes. I think this does fall into that infinity of gray. And you can have, perceived lack of morals, but really it comes down to they're just interacting with the rule set as rules is written, or I guess outside of rules is written, I guess is a more appropriate term there. And they're able to give people who were passed up a chance into there. So it's interesting to kind of analyze this duality, to try to look at the morals and ethics. Are they wrong? Are they in the right? What was their impact? I think it's really interesting.
Hire what I'm going to describe as the 4 horsemen of violence. Now I'm going to go ahead and read off some of their stats. Bear in mind, these are career stats and their careers aren't over yet. So these are not the stats that they have at the current time that they're being brought in, but this is going to give you an idea of who these men are. Also, important context, if you don't know anything about hockey, when you get penalty minutes in hockey, it's essentially you get taken off the ice and you have to go sit in a penalty box and you're not allowed to play for a certain amount of game time, which, as I'm sure you can imagine from like football or any other sport, if your star running back gets penalized and he's not allowed to play for 3 minutes of game time, it can drastically shape the entire course of the game. So penalty minutes are a big deal. So with that in mind, our first horseman is Andre the Moose DuPont, coming in at 6 foot, 200 pounds with 1,191 minutes in the penalty box.
Nice.
Then we've got Don Selesky, aka Big Bird, coming in at 6'3", 210 pounds with 1,129 career penalty minutes.
Nice.
And then we've got Bob Kelly, aka The Hound, coming in at 5'10", 185 pounds with 1,454 career penalty minutes.
I'm gonna have to eat every fucking chicken in this room.
You're gonna die for some chickens.
Someone is.
And then we have our headliner, David Schultz, aka The Hammer, coming in at 6'1", 185 pounds with 2,294 career penalty minutes. Okay, this man still has the record for the most amount of penalty time in a single season at 472 minutes. 8 hours of penalty time in a single season. The man could have watched all 3 Lord of the Rings, the director's cuts, while he was sitting inside the box. In a single season, he once got in 34 fights, okay? A, that's a lot of fights. But B, to put that into perspective, at that point in time, the team average for the rest of the league was 30 fights for the team collectively, and this guy got in 34 fights by himself.
Nice.
He literally once got in a fight while the referee was on the ice announcing how many penalty minutes he had to serve for the fight he just got in 30 seconds prior. And as a cherry on top, they hire a new head coach by the name of Freddie the Fog Shiro, a former boxer and philosopher that primarily studies Sun Tzu and Alexander the Great. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, the Philadelphia Flyers are basically just planning to go to war, and David Clark is probably the safest man in the NHL at this point. So for the next couple of seasons,
I kind of dig it, honestly. Like, that's actually super... So when you look at that, it's interesting because, I mean, effectively it's a resource, right? Effectively, sure, you're taking players off the ice. However, what is the perceived cost-benefit analysis of getting into 34 fights by yourself in a single season to have over 400 minutes of penalty, 8 hours of penalty time in a single season? What is that going to do to your adversary, right? And clearly it's still within some sort of regulation, still above board in some capacity, because at that point you're using it as a resource, right? That's what it comes down to. Hey, this thing exists. You mean that if you get into a fight, you just have to serve penalty time if it's, I'm sure, below a certain intensity, right? Like if you, I don't know, were to just absolutely just go at ham on somebody in a certain capacity, I'm sure they'd probably just actually DQ you. But like, yeah, just keep it above board with these things in mind. Go ham. Just pad those penalty time stats. HP is a resource. Yeah, exactly. I kind of like it.
The Flyers go out and they literally just start beating the shit out of the enemy team, so much so that they almost immediately get the nickname the Broad Street Bullies, and all the other teams and their fan bases hate the Philadelphia Flyers. It gets so bad that there's like actually newspaper articles and shit where the newspaper is telling locals from different cities whenever the Flyers show up for an away game, the Philadelphia Flyers are coming, lock up your wives and kids.
Hide your kids, hide your wife.
But the management of the Philadelphia Flyers doesn't really give a shit, because guess what? All those other teams aren't the ones that are showing up to watch the Philadelphia Flyers game, which is how they make money. The Philadelphia Flyers end up winning more and fighting more, which guess what? Both of those put asses in seats, and that makes money, and that's the entire goal. During this time, the Flyers end up having winning seasons every year. They have their first successful playoff series, and Philadelphia falls in love with the Broad Street Bullies. And while the winning and fighting alone is probably enough to fill out an entire stadium, it's more than that, because the Broad Street Bullies become like cultural icons in Philadelphia. It becomes well known to all the Flyers fans that after every single home game, the Flyers are going to be going across the street to their bar, Rexy's Bar and Grill, and you can actually go drink with your home team after they win a game. And then every weekend, the Flyers are going out drinking and playing slow pitch softball. So not only could you go and watch your team win and fight, but you could literally go have a beer with them at the bar and then show up on the weekend and play beer softball the entire time. Like, Philadelphia falls in love with these dudes. Like, these are not just the people they look up to. They're like their friends. These guys are family to the entire city.
Can you imagine, before we get to the bug, can you imagine if you were able to go, I don't know, I don't actually know modern, like, I was still, oh God, who was the Pittsburgh Steeler quarterback when I was in football? I mean, I was like looking at NFL in any capacity between like years 2004 and 2008. I used to know names. I don't remember names anymore. Like, imagine like being able to just, I don't know, John Madden, if he was still alive, being able to just go and have a drink with John Madden, or be able to go and eat with people who are on the St. Louis Rams no longer exists. It's LA Rams again, I think, right? Yeah, being able to go just out to eat with the Rams, right? Like, I think there's a level of this that just isn't around anymore. I mean, I hear that a lot of modern like NFL, like professional sports ball, as I will call it. I say sports ball because my definition of a sport is grabbing Shania rapiers or longswords and hitting each other with those. It is sports ball, for all intents and purposes to me. Like, it feels very diva-ish, if I'm gonna say, if that makes sense. I don't know, but that's also my inherent issue I have with sports ball, where it's like we do the play, time out, we gotta go do things for the next 5 minutes. Just play the game, just hit each other with the sword, like, please. It's why my brain can't wrap my head around sports ball, because quite literally I hit people with swords. I like hitting people with swords. I like getting hit with swords. That's what I like. That is less of a war game. Sports ball is less of a war game than hitting people with swords. So fundamental disagreement there. That's why I actually don't prefer it. But like, yeah, I don't see anybody being able to. This is such a community thing, and I think it's something that we really don't have. Maybe we have it in a college capacity, but then again, I don't know. Like in Idaho, we have Boise State University down in Boise. Up in Idaho, we have Idaho State University up in not Lewiston. I can't remember the city right now. It might be Lewiston. We have ISU, and then I think we have the Bengals in Eastern Idaho. I think they're part of a different division than ISU and BSU, though. And I'm sure maybe you have some players that do things, but nothing in this capacity. I think this is a relic of a time that doesn't really exist anymore. And it's really interesting. It's kind of like in the Pan Am video we watched, when people will say, get a real job, work with a company that's going to invest in you for the next 30 to 40 years and then retire with a pension. They're talking about like Pan Am, like old Pan Am, how they used to treat their employees. But we don't really have a modern equivalent to that. So I think people like the idea of sports ball, of football, etc., but we don't really have this same level of community building with it, it's just interesting to analyze.
Just because the team's winning doesn't mean that entire sport's going to become more popular and you're suddenly going to care about hockey because your local team has a good record.
Disagree.
Bullshit, okay? I was alive in 2008 when Michael Phelps went over to fucking China and swam really good, and all of a sudden the entire country of the United States pretended that swimming was awesome. Okay, I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. One day, nobody gave a fuck about swimming. The next day, the news came out and was like, hey, have you guys seen this fucking stoner with arms down to his ankles that can swim faster than most Americans can run? He's winning a bunch of gold medals in the Olympics. Suddenly, swimming was the shit. Okay, don't tell me winning doesn't matter. So things are going great.
From a nerdy games perspective, didn't Exodia, like actual 5-piece Wombo Combo Exodia, win a Yu-Gi-Oh event in like 2024? And that became the big thing. How many people would be influxing into Yu-Gi-Oh if they heard a headline like that, right? If you had a headline like Pokemon TCG, his top deck is objectively just Pikachu.deck, how many people are going to play Pokemon? Obviously, I'm saying this in a nerdy way, right? Like uber nerd status, like tips up glasses, nerd, right? But like, yeah, like people are like, absolutely. You kidding me? From the way he words it, Fat Electrician words it, he's absolutely correct. I do agree that the buh is in fact a BS argument. 100%. That's actually how that works. And getting community involvement as well, right? That can help boost it even more, right? Imagine if Wolfie VGC, big Pokemon player, just went to a Chili's or something like that. And a bunch of people were like, oh my God, that's Wolf Glick. Oh my God, please tell us about your Executor, right? Cool, awesome. When Custodes won a tournament last year. Warhammer 40K. As it turns out, when a faction wins a tournament, Adeptus Custodes, they will be bought out immediately. And then your codex gets nerfed, and then people will sell out immediately. That's how this works, 100%.
For the Flyers franchise, they've got more money. More money means better players, so they go out and they buy some more skill players to help out David Clark on the offensive end. They pick up future Hall of Famer Bill Barber and Reggie the Rifle Leach. So now the Broad Street Bullies are going to go out there, beat everybody up, get them nice and soft. These guys are going to go in, score a bunch of goals. It's almost a perfect plan. They just have to make sure that nobody scores goals on them. So they go out there and they pick up future Hall of Famer, legendary goalie, Bernie Perreault. I cannot stress to you how good of a goalie this guy turned out to be. It became a saying in Philadelphia at this point in time that only God saves more than Bernie Perreault. So they've assembled the dream team. They go out in this next season and they crush absolutely everybody. They get 50 wins. They have 103 fights, 1,750 150 penalty minutes. They end up winning the Stanley Cup. Next season, they go out, they do the exact same thing, even harder. This is a season where David the Hammer Schultz gets 34 fights and sets the record for the most penalty minutes. They go and win the Stanley Cup again 2 times in a row. Now that happened in May of 1975, and in 1975, it's kind of this period of cooling down for the Cold War, right? The Vietnam conflict has come to an end completely. Sure. The space race is over. Like things are kind of improving, so to speak. There's still a lot of issues. There's still an arms race going on, but like tensions are lower than they have been in decades. And because of this, the governments of America and the Soviet Union allow the Soviet Red Army hockey team to come over to America to have some exhibition matches with professional NHL teams.
Wasn't there allegedly instances of, I believe it was Soviet athletes potentially doing illicit substances? I don't know if this is a before this, during this, or after this. I'm pretty sure there was an era where the Soviets engaged in illicit substances. I guess, I don't know. To be fair, that's one of those, like, pretty sure athletes from all over the world get disqualified for that. Like, I can't in good faith say, yeah, go do illicit substances. No, like, that just takes the sport out of it. And then you get into the whole interesting world of designer supplements, as we'll call them, and an increasing desire for untraceable substances to increase performance. That is a whole rabbit hole in itself, and that was really fascinating to dive into. But yeah, like, the Soviet Union did some interesting things.
They're not treated like exhibition matches, okay? These are the most important games on the planet right now. This is capitalism versus communism on ice. And the Soviet team is absolutely stacked. Every single person on this team has at least one, if not multiple, Olympic gold medals. They all have like 5 or 6 world championship titles. They're a good hockey team, as much as it pains me to say that, but it's the truth.
He said it! He said it!
So in December of 1975, the Red Army team comes over to America and beats the New York Rangers 7-3. A couple weeks later, January 8th, 1976, they play the Boston Bruins, complete blowout 5-2. And now the only team they have left to play 3 days later on January 11th, 1976, is the Philadelphia Flyers, the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, and the entire world is watching. People that don't even know hockey, understand it, or have ever cared about hockey in their entire lives are tuning in to watch this game. This is a cultural fucking event. People that have never cared about hockey in their entire lives are suddenly Philadelphia Flyer fans. People that have watched hockey their entire lives, that have hated the Philadelphia Flyers for years because they are the villains of the NHL, are now suddenly rooting for the Philadelphia Flyers. They're no longer the villains. They are the anti-heroes that America needs to go out and shut down the Soviet Red Army team. Big problem.
I mean, yeah, at the end, it is an East versus West. It is a very tangible, because obviously we had, Bay of Pigs during the Cold War. We had, actually during the same time, didn't the U.S. use, I believe it was Turkey, 2-point missiles at the Soviet, there was context behind the Cold War, absolutely. But like, what could you really, as a person, a John Random, right? Or Jane Random, right? What could you do about that? You couldn't do anything. You didn't have any oversight of the Bay of Pigs. You didn't have anything in regards to weapons emplacements and stuff. For all intents, mutually assured destruction, you didn't have anything you could really do about that other than duck under your desk, because some cartoon turtle told you to duck under your desk. But this is a very tangible, very community-focused East versus West, right? Capitalism versus communism, the U.S. versus the USSR. And I think that's why people would latch on to it, even if you're not a fan, right? Or even if you're like, oh, I don't really care about hockey. Suddenly you're mobilized into being interested in this.
Elephant in the room, Bernie Perot, our goalie, is hurt and he's not going to be able to play this game. We're running on the backup goalie. What are we going to do? Coach Freddie the Fog Shiro realizes that the Soviets skate and move and play the game different than any NHL team, right? NHL teams is like, stop, go, do this. The Soviets are moving constantly. They're always circling. They're constantly skating. They're always compared to being ballerinas on ice. So Freddie says, here's a strategy. Rather than chasing the puck like we normally do, we're going to chase them instead. We're going to put so much pressure on them that they can't do all this pretty ballerina on ice bullshit.
Okay.
Basically, we're going to play like the Soviets play, but more violent, and in doing so, we're going to drag them down to our level. Violence is not the answer, it's the question. The answer is yes, okay? It makes perfect sense. If we control the puck the entire time, they're not allowed to shoot. It doesn't matter who we have guarding the net. Do you know what's better than having really good body armor and getting shot? Not getting fucking shot.
If we win, I'm going to be sky high, and if we lose, I think it'll be worse than dying.
So the Red Army and the Flyers both take to the ice. The Red Army team's all pretty. They have matching pristine uniforms. They've got their little helmets on. The Philadelphia Flyers come out there, no helmets, no teeth, complete fucking goon squad. They go out there, they stick to the plan. They start beating the shit out of the Soviets. And when I say them, I don't just mean like the big enforcer type dudes like Dave Schultz. No, every single player on the Flyers team is playing super aggressive hockey, even their skill players. The plan is working exactly how they had hoped. The Soviets have like almost no possession time with the puck. Out of the first 13 shots of the game, the Philadelphia Flyers took 12 of them. Right out of the gate, the Soviets are getting absolutely fucking smoked, and they have no answers for the Philadelphia Flyers. So Karmelov, the Soviet team captain, their golden boy, their main character, goes out there. He gets checked when he has the puck. Wasn't even a hard check, wasn't worthy of a foul, wasn't anything. The dude flops like LeBron or some soccer player hoping to get a foul called. He lays there rolling around on the ground crying, hoping the referee's gonna call this foul. The ref basically has to go over to the Soviet coach and is like, that was a clean hit, I'm not calling it. Tell your guy to get the fuck up or I'm gonna hit you with a delay of game. So the Soviet coach throws a fucking hissy fit and tells all of his players, we're done playing this game, head out to the locker room, and the Soviets fucking leave. They bounce. We're like 11 minutes into the game and they just fucking dip. It's still 0-0, and now the world is not gonna have answers on who's actually the best at playing hockey. Now nobody knows what's going on. Minutes are going by like hours, like is the game over? Should I go home and try to beat the traffic out of the stadium? Like what's the deal? And the NHL commissioner, Clarence Campbell, is like, okay, hold on. In a moment of genius, he hates the fucking Philadelphia Flyers, by the way, but he's rooting for them right now and he wants this game to continue. So he's like, okay, they're communist. They want a moneyless, classless, stateless society. Fuck it, let's put that to the test. He goes to the locker room and tells the Soviet coach, I'm not going to pay you guys the 200 grand you were supposed to get paid for this series unless you get your fucking ass back out on that ice and play hockey. And just like that, the Soviets magically decided that they were going to go back out there and finish this hockey game, okay? Capitalism just won in real life. Let's see if it can win on the ice. The game starts back up. It's 17 seconds in. Reggie the Rifle Leach scores the first goal. 5 minutes later, they score another goal. They've had the puck pretty much the entire time. They're absolutely dominating the Soviets. So obviously, how can we add insult to injury? So Joe Watson, one of the lesser-known Philadelphia Flyers, dude was on the team that won the Stanley Cup this year, and he only scored one goal the entire season. He goes up, he scores a goal on the Soviet goaltender that is supposedly the greatest goalie on the planet at this point in time. Everybody in the stadium except for the Soviets, the crowd, the Flyers themselves, goes absolutely fucking nuts. He goes back up to the bench and Freddie the Fog tells him, you just set Soviet hockey back by 20 years. After that, the Soviets do manage to squeak one goal in there past the Flyers, so they immediately return the favor, scoring a fourth goal. The game ends 4-1. The Flyers dominated the entire time. The Flyers took 49 shots and the Soviets only got to take 13. In the post-game interview, David Clark, the captain for the Philadelphia Flyers and the MVP that year, rolls up, no helmet, no front teeth, and says, just so we're all on the same page, this doesn't prove that North American style hockey is better than Soviet hockey. This proves that the Philadelphia Flyers are better than their best. And that's probably why Disney didn't want to cover this in the movie. It's not the heartwarming, inspiring little tidbit about, oh, it's not about winning or losing, it's about how you play the game. No, this is a story about how sometimes violence is effective and being the bigger bully fucking works. Thanks for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang out.
What a great video. I never knew this was a thing.
And then, as a thank you to the Philadelphia Flyers for effectively saving the day, they went and changed all the rules in professional hockey to more heavily penalize fighting and violence, and it basically ended the Philadelphia Flyers' success and their third run for a Stanley Cup.
Wow. Can't believe rules and bureaucracy win again. Oh, but I mean, that gets into like gentlemanly like gameplay, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we still have things like I believe it's ACL, right? Armored Combat League. Pretty sure that you can dude, I want Rage Cage. Just put on armor, go into Rage Cage. People just throw you around. People just absolutely go ham. Oh man, obviously it's all done in a safe capacity, but like getting hit in armor though. Also, because relevant meme, that was back then money. $200,000 back then money. That is substantially more today. It's very interesting as well. I guess that kind of feeds into the whole diva kind of thing, right? Because like, well, we're just not going to play. Okay, that's fine. If you don't want to pay what you're contracted for, you're not going to pay what we're supposed to have. Like, you're not going to play. Sure, we're just not going to pay you if you're not going to perform. I do think that that is fair. I think that that definitely gets probably scrutinized from proponents against that, right? Like, well, you effectively held them hostage. I don't know, dude. At the end of the day, if you're paid for a job, do the job. Unless there's actual extenuating circumstances outside of your control that just literally make it not safe, right? But then again, fighting maybe makes sense. So I liked it though. As someone who really hasn't followed hockey, it was really interesting to kind of see this. Kind of interesting to take a look at this. Kind of interesting to see a bit of history, a little bit of East versus West in the Cold War, and really just kind of learn more about it. I also want to, in terms of hyper accountability, right, as I'm a huge proponent of, I want to take accountability for what I said in a prior video, as well as offer an apology to not only the Fat Electrician, but a lot of other people as well, in regards to my statement in AI usage, or Google AI, as well as content. What that came out of, this is not justification for my actions, that came out of a fear of someone who I actually really like their content. Fat Electrician, love his content, cannot recommend it enough. Came out of a left field and honestly irrational fear of potentially watching a YouTuber start to use more and more AI-sourced things, and leading into some biased information, to which at this point in time, there was a lovely individual who did provide paragraphs as well as a link in regards to numbers in regards to American aid to the Soviets. So thank you for that, by the way. Thank you for substantiating an argument. I do appreciate you. So I'm going to issue an apology. I'm going to issue an official apology. That is my irrationality. That is me jumping to conclusion and jumping at shadows to come to conclusions that are not necessarily reality. So in the interest of being hyper accountable, like I hold other people with certain stances, I will hold myself hyper accountable for just being objectively wrong. It also comes with the caveat as well that the good faith information that I had is one of those that I'm definitely going to make sure that I personally put in more research as well into coming up with those figures to see if they match before I run my dumb mouth. So that is not disingenuous. I really do like the Fat Electrician. I want to make sure that I'm being as transparent as possible and taking accountability when it does turn out I'm just wrong. So thank you everyone for watching. I really do appreciate it. I definitely recommend that you check out both the Fat Electrician and the Fat Files in the description down below. It's there for your convenience, as well as Pepperbox TV. Not that I'm affiliated, sponsored with, incentivized, partnered with, any way, shape, or form affiliated with Pepperbox TV. I just think that they're doing a lot of cool work, and I hear there's a lot of spicy stuff over there. So thank you for watching. Really do appreciate it.